To speak on this, I'm joined now by Mahesh Jethmalani, Senior Advocate and former Member of Parliament. Mr. Jethmalani, thank you so much for speaking with us. When you heard the news this morning that Hindenburg is now shutting shop, and you, I'm sure, read Nate Anderson's letter, what were the first thoughts that came to mind?
My first thoughts that came to mind were that this is karmic justice. I said that, this is a short seller who profiteered with Mr. George Soros and tried to shake the Indian markets, and of course, bear hammered the Adani shares. So I said that, if you believe in astrology, this is the time when post-Makar Sankranti, things turn better for victims of enemies. And, a lot of India's enemies are going to fall by the wayside. So in a sense, this aligns with the coming of Trump. And my own view is that Nate Anderson, has really got the fear of his life as to what might be forthcoming. I think it will be forthcoming for a lot of people who've tried to destabilize the Indian economy.
So, okay, he's got the fear of his life, but look at some of the things he's saying, Mr. Jethmalani. He goes on to talk about, I don't play golf, I don't wear good clothes, I didn't come from a finance. What exactly is he trying to say? Is this playing the victim card? Is this trying to escape legal scrutiny or consequence for his actions? Is he trying to paint some kind of picture?
Yes, I think he's trying to, it's an exercise in self-pity, right? For somebody who's actually indulged in very shady games. Right? And he first allowed himself to be called the short seller itself. He didn't deny that. When SEBI wrote to him, he said, look, I'm not the short seller. I'm a research analyst who provided material to another company. And there's a Chinese link. He can't escape that. And of course, to some extent, his statement, his reply to SEBI helped, because then we found out who the other players were. It's true that actually he was only a research analyst, but for some time he didn't deny the tag which other people were giving him who were involved of being the actual short seller. But then you came to, the Kotak group acting as brokers for a company, for a trust fund which was owned by the Kingdoms, right? One of whom is Anla Cheng, who happens to be a Chinese spy being investigated for Chinese espionage on behalf of the Chinese state. So there's a lot of quirks in all this, but I think, in short, in substance, Nate Anderson and Hindenburg have said goodbye to their destabilizing ways. They're being fly-by-night operators used basically by enemies of India and people who are close to the democratic deep state, which in turn is funded by George Soros.
Now, so the question is then the reasons, Mr. Jethmalani, the reasons that he gave. One flimsier than the other. I mean, you read the whole letter and then you're still wondering what he's trying to say.
Yes.
So what about the timing? First of all, do you buy any of those reasons? I suppose not. But what do you make of the timing before 20th of January when Donald Trump swears in as takes oath as president once again?
Well, the timing is absolutely ominous. I mean, it's complete. It gives the game away, because obviously he fears that he will be called in for investigation. He knows that he's done wrong. He knows that this was an attempt to destabilize the Indian economy, which was an ally of the United States. I mean, we were treated very shabbily by a quad ally, i.e. the US. But I don't blame, you can't blame the entire United States government, but certainly the democratic deep state, the elements that control the Democratic Party in the US. And there is no doubt that George Soros drives the agenda of that democratic deep state. I mean, there's enough evidence that he's the main financier of the party. And his son Alex continues. I mean, his son Alex now is going to wed Huma Abedin, who's Hillary Clinton's private secretary at once upon a time when she was Secretary of State.
So what now, Mr. Jethmalani? Is it as simple as, so two-part question. One, Hindenburg shutting shop, does it mean Nate Anderson and the genesis of the attacks end? Because if he was just a front, then obviously the perpetrators are still out there. And second, should there be no consequence for his actions? Because this is like perhaps a burglar saying that now I have quit my ways, I'm not a burglar anymore. What about all of the robberies? What about the attacks?
Well, Tamar, I mean, first of all, there is an investigation going on by SEBI. So as far as the Indian authorities are concerned, SEBI will continue and do their best to call him to account. Of course, there's something difficult about the reach to an extraterritorial individual or entity like Hindenburg and Nate Anderson. But SEBI must do its best because we must have a deterrent for the future where, foreign predators, financial predators are stalking our big companies and trying to destabilize those companies who provide wealth and jobs and infrastructure and who are being undermined. And ultimately, of course, that has a ripple effect on the whole economy and retail investors. So, certainly SEBI should do something. I have no doubt that the American authorities responsible for, the Securities Commission and so on and so forth will also investigate this. And I won't be surprised if people who are alarmed by George Soros within the Republican administration will also be taking action. That how could you treat an ally in Quad and somebody whom you say is a vital ally for your Indo-Pacific aims, right, in this manner?
So just a couple of questions now, Mr. Jethmalani. What happens to the Supreme Court case? What is the kind of view as the Supreme Court and SEBI could take of this announcement today? And overall, what about the people who have either initiated political attacks or legal action based on the report itself?
Well, those people can certainly be taken to task, right? The Indian government should. I mean, this is a case for investigation by the CBI for all the people who profited, right? I mean, already some people in Parliament who raised questions about it, right, for alleged consideration have already been named. But I think this needs to go a lot further about all these people, all those people in India, because I consider them to be agents of, enemies, persons inimical to Indians' economic interests. So all those persons should be investigated by the CBI. There's no question on that, because I'm sure a lot of people have profited in this. I think Kotak could give us a lot of information in this matter. He's a broking house, right? Somebody has to ask him how he was approached by them. Yeah, how he was approached to do this.
So is there now a situation, and is it valid to expect, say, a SEBI, a Supreme Court, the legal establishment to go after Nate Anderson and ask him what the genesis of all of this is? And, we're talking about just the Indian context. Nate Anderson has been doing this for a while. Could other regulators also step in, and would there be a valid case for that?
Well, you mean other regulators outside India?
Yes.
Already on the job.
Yes, SEC, for example.
The Securities Commission, SEC, in the United States could certainly look. It's extremely ominous that not just Nate Anderson, right? But the moment Trump came in, the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, who presented this indictment, also resigned. Right? I forget his name now, but he had also resigned. So obviously, that resignation is a sign that they knew that what they had done was wrong. Both Hindenburg and the Deputy Attorney General had been people who were being used by the system. The latter, even after Biden had lost.
Just last question to you, Mr. Jethmalani, because I know you're very, very busy today. Does this put, in a sense, an end to all of the allegations or credibility of the allegations or those who use the allegations to mount attacks? The fact that he's shut down, Does it puncture any kind of credibility, if Hindenburg had any, in some people's eyes?
Well, I think let's not take too much of an inductive leap from this, right? The fact that Hindenburg has gone is certainly a very significant factor, right? It shows that it reveals two things clearly. One, that he is fearful of the Trump administration, and you are only fearful of the new administration if you think that you did something wrong and was protected by the old administration. A. B, I also think that it shows that he was a fly-by-night operator and he was fronting for somebody else. And now we know that actually he was being manipulated and made a front until he himself was compelled in his reply to SEBI to expose who his principals were. Right? So he was a fly-by-night operator. There are only two cases for which he's prominent for short selling. One is involved in short selling. I don't know if he actually made a big short sale or he was the mastermind. One is the Adani case, and the other is Nikola Enterprise. Right. So this man doesn't. Hindenburg was being projected at the time by some huge, financial organization. In effect, Nate Anderson, as he points out himself in his disbanding letter, right, is a pretty pathetic, ordinary creature. He didn't have the wherewithal to go in for such major pair hammering issues. Right? He was a front, he was a tool, and he did make some money, but somebody else exploited him and made much more money and attempted to cause havoc in India to the economy and the retail investors and the groups they targeted like Adani.
That, I think, keeps the question open. Yes, Hindenburg has shut shop, but what about the people who are behind him? And is there any real valid reason for him to shut shop? Does this also shut any kind of boost that these allegations were getting? Thank you so much for your time. Mahesh Jethmalani, Senior Advocate and former Member of Parliament.